Some do not feel that it is a religious duty to prepare food properly. Hence, they do not learn how. It requires thought and care to make good bread. But there is more religion in a good loaf of bread than many think. Food can be prepared simply and healthfully, but it requires skill to make it both palatable and nourishing. In order to learn how to cook, women should study and then patiently reduce what they learn into practice. People are suffering because they will not take the trouble to do this. I say to such, it is time for you to rouse your dormant energies and inform yourselves. So that's what we're going to do right now. So what I'm doing, if you ever come across something that says in baking to spoon it in, all they're doing is, instead of having like a compacted flour and you dip your cup in, and of that compacted flour, you're probably getting at least half a cup extra. So all I'm doing is fluffing the flour. And so it's the same as spooning it in, as long as you don't shake it when it comes down. And then you take a knife and you even it off, and there's a cup. So I've pulled that out for you guys afterwards to come feel the flour, because there is a difference in the old time flour. What we're going to go back to is Ellen White's time in cooking and the flours that she used and the methods. It wasn't easy. There's not anything that says this is what she used. She did not put a recipe into a lot of her books, but there was an article that I read. Her granddaughter, who cooked in her kitchen until she was 15 when Ellen White passed away. And she mentioned 2 cookbooks. One I cannot find anything on, but then I found this one and bought it. This is over 100 years old. And I bought it, and it had, and the granddaughter did say that they did not use the recipes. A lot of them they changed, because a lot of them called for milk and eggs and things like that. But I was able to go through here and find several. Speaking of which, the Vegetarian Cookbook, and it's by E.G. Fulton. It took me 4 books to find enough information on how to do the bread. It did not come out for me. They're called gems. And Becky and I were talking one night, and I said, I'm looking for a good bread recipe, one that only uses flour and water. And she said Ellen White said, if you had a good bread recipe, she's like, give us the recipe. And then I went to a bookstore, and I was walking out, and I just turned to the guy and I said, do you have any books by Ellen G. White? I could not find them in there, but I asked him, and he had a set of books. And I picked up the second one in the series. I did not pick up the first one, which normally I read the series from the beginning, and it had a gem recipe. I was so excited. And I sent it to Becky, and I said, we found it. It's the gem recipe. But this recipe is, the old time cookbooks are not easy to follow, because they assume you already know the things you have to do to make them come out correctly. So they handed it down, mother to daughter, grandma to daughter, and granddaughter, on down the family. And that's how they handed the secrets down. They weren't written down. And so they're very vague and very difficult to follow, because it's about technique. It's not about the ingredients. Some of it is the ingredients, but I went to a mill, and to find the flour that they used, it's gram flour. It's a different type of flour than, I tried it with whole wheat flour. Gram flour is more of a cornmeal texture, but it's from the entire wheat kernel. And they do absolutely no sifting. You can look up their substitutes for ground flour, but I wanted the actual ground flour to see if I could get it to come out. I tried whole wheat. I tried white flour. I tried a mixture of whole wheat and white mixed. I tried thin. I tried thick. Nothing came out. They say to use, this is what the gems look like. They say they're very small, to use cast iron, and you're to have your cast iron hot before you put them in. These were good on the outside. The insides are not good. I couldn't get them to work. I ran out of time. This class came up. And what I'm going to do is give everybody the recipe, and you're going to have to practice it at home, because I will continue to practice. I probably made it close to 10 different times and just couldn't make it anymore before the class. But I will say it was tasty. And I really like this flour. And I'm a baker. I'm not a novice baker, but I still could not get it to come out. And so I wanted to give you that. So in Ellen White's book, it says cold water. Use cold water in this recipe. Well, that's an understatement, because this is a book Andrew had, and it's very precious. It came from his uncle. And this is from Kellogg, Ella Eaton Kellogg. And I really want this book. But it had some stuff on gems. And it said, you need to have it so cold, ice crystals are forming on it. Wow. Well, that's a big difference from that. Just cold water, because I was just using cold water. This is ice water you have to use. And they said they put the bowl of water on a block of ice. And because they didn't have refrigeration, they say ice it. So you have to interpret the recipes. So then I will mention, this is also from his uncle. It's twice the size of mine. And this was written in 1912, and mine was 1916 or 14. Anyway, there's only a few years difference, but the size difference. So I'm going to look through and see what they've changed. That would be interesting. So to do an off-grid cooking, you have to figure out how to make textures the way they did it. Because if we want a puree, I'm going back to soup. If we wanted a puree, we would just use a blender, right? Well, they didn't have them. So I will be showing you that technique. This technique in Ellen White's book, written by her grandson, it says to beat it like you would beat cornmeal for cornmeal mush. So you have to know how to do cornmeal mush. So you've got your cold water in here, and I cut the recipe in half. I will give you the half recipe, because when you're doing a testing, you don't want a full recipe because you waste a lot. And if it doesn't work, then you waste. So I've cut it down to, let me see, I've written it down. I should have it memorized by now, but I don't. 3/4 of a cup. And I had 3/4 of a cup. That's half. This is going to be a guesstimate, but we're not eating this anyway, and I'm not baking it.
That's supposed to be the ice water.
This is supposed to be the ice water. I had it in, this is a metal bowl, because I wanted it cold, in the freezer, ice around it, and I mixed it. And in the Kellogg book, they were kind of like, she wasn't mean, but she kind of implied that the bread didn't come out because some women were stirring. Well, after beating, it's supposed to be beaten for 10 to 15 minutes. Your arm is ready to fall off. But for you guys, I did that. And it still didn't work. So anyway, I had the ice water, And I did it. So I'm going to move this so everybody can see. In case you haven't ever made cornmeal, I want to make sure you guys see it. And let's see, this is one cup. So 3/4 cup water plus 1.5 tablespoons. That was in my in the book. They had 1 egg. In Ellen White's book, it was just flour and water, and that's what we need. As time gets less and less, we're not going to have everything. Plus, we don't eat eggs. A lot of us don't, and so you want to have something simple. So what I did was, an egg is, the liquid in an egg is 3 tablespoons. So you put 1.5 tablespoons of liquid. We're going to guess. I'm going to try to get consistency for you. So 1.5 tablespoons, 3/4 cup water plus 1.5 tablespoons, and that 1.5 makes up for half an egg. So your consistency should be the same. Also, I'm going to tell you something that I do, and I don't think it made a difference, but I did try it with salt and without. So I did that, but I put salt. I gave Becky my spoon. Here's my other one. I brought 2. So I put salt in the water and stir it just to disperse it. And then later you don't have to worry about making sure it's mixed through. So we've got salt, and I use a fine grain, but if you're doing it ahead of time, the coarse grain's fine too. All right, so I'm making the cornmeal, and you whisk because you don't want lumps. So you put it in. At first it's fine. It's fine. Then it starts getting not fine. This is the, this is the ground flour. So it's like cornmeal is how you're supposed to make it. And I have to say, it feels like cornmeal. So if you make cornmeal mush or polenta, you kind of have the idea of what it feels like. I'm just going to dump. And that bowl is one of my favorite bowls. Okay, so this is what you get with that. Well, in one book it says a thin pancake batter. Does that look like a thin pancake batter? Ellen White says, this is where my problem came. Ellen White's recipe said thin pancake batter, but they don't give amounts, but she says if it's too thin, it will be hollow like a popover. If it's too thick, it's going to be soggy and dense. So you see the problem. It's going to take you a little bit. We're going to add a little bit more water. And then I'm going to tell you, I did have a triumph with these. This one. So this is, and in one book, I think it was Kellogg's, it said as it comes down, it needs to set on top of itself. So if you've ever poured a batter and it sits on top of itself before it spreads, that's the consistency that book says. So you've got to beat for 15 minutes in ice cold water. It says also have everything you need to make these ready to go. Jewel pans in the oven, hot, and your pot holders don't even have anything else that you have to put it down and go get. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So I stirred and stirred and stirred and beat it. And then I'm like, no. Anybody see one of these? We're supposed to also incorporate the air. The science behind it, you can kind of look it up, is to incorporate quickly the cold into the batter. That's why you have to move fast. Doing this for 10 minutes, I stopped at 10, is not easy either. but you can do it easier than whisking. Andrew and I were talking, why would you need beaters? You know, usually whipped cream, cake batters in the old time. No, it's for gems. You need it for gems. So this beats it in, gets the air in while it's cold, hopefully. You do that. And it does get lighter and fluffier. That is how I was able to get this. And the triumph in this was, it was hollow. So I got it too thin, but I still got what they had talked about instead of just the solid, soggy one. So I was able to scrape out the soggy stuff, and then I ate it, and that's the one that was good. So let me show you what a gem pan is. I'm not attached to anything. I did not have one. They're hard to find. You Google gem pans. I didn't find gem pans. I found muffin pans. Anyway, it described them small, and some are flat. If you have the cast iron cornbread, where it's a corn, I have one, but I couldn't find it. We moved 2 years ago, and some stuff is still not unpacked. So that was not going to happen. But you guys know what I mean by that. That is very thin, you know, very thin and long. I would try that if you have it. There's supposed to be airflow between the cups, I guess, and cast iron. So we had this. This, how I found that it was, we went to a garage sale. It was a neighborhood thing. It was huge. We go every year, my family and I prayed, Lord, help me find a gem pan. I didn't find just one. I found two. $5 a piece. Who finds gem pans in a garage sale? Well, thank you, Lord. So it was, he wanted you guys, just like with the recipe, he wanted you guys to know this recipe. That's why I'm giving it to you, even though I could not get it to work. I will get it to work, and so will you guys. Even if you have to scrape the center, it's cast iron. And I will talk about this later today. Anyway, you have your gem pan in the oven heating. What was the temperature? Well, they don't give you a temperature. So I went off bread. What do you bake bread? Anywhere from 400 to 450. I went 425. They're small. They should bake pretty fast. It's hot. And I took, even though I seasoned that, which I will talk about later, I took a little napkin with oil and went around each cup because I wanted to make sure these came out. You heat it for 10 minutes, you bring it out, you put your batter in. Well, to be an even batter, because you don't want some more than others, I used a scoop, my biggest scoop, and that's how they all came out very uniform, and they're small. They did emphasize they need to be small. So I scooped it in. It was hot. It sizzles immediately and seals it. And what they said was, you want it to crust over the entire thing before the cold air is gone. So there you go. That's what I know, and now you know it too. And your gems are small. You can keep them in glass, which is a nice feature. And one story I read, Ellen White had been, I got to stir soup. Ellen White had been speaking all day, and she was hungry. Her grandson said she was hungry, and she ate 2 gems and an apple before she had to go back out and speak. She says that we will be filled we can eat a lot less and still be filled.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.